Thousands of MAGA faithful turned out over the weekend for Turning Point USA's annual America Fest summit. And it may indeed have been a turning point for the MAGA movement. Because while they are united in their loyalty to President Trump, different factions of the coalition were fighting for influence amid a brewing fight on the right over how to handle anti-Semites and conspiracy theorists who consider themselves part of the movement.
There's a moment in every authoritarian movement's life cycle when it stops trying to win converts and starts hunting for traitors. When the enemy isn't the opposition anymore, it's the insufficiently loyal. When purity tests become impossible to pass. When yesterday's ally is today's heretic. MAGA just hit that moment, and it's tearing itself apart in real time. In December 2024, Elon Musk threatened to go to war against MAGA conservatives who opposed H-1B visas. He stripped blue checkmarks from Loomer and a dozen other critics. He called them contemptible fools who must be removed from the Republican Party. Surprised? In January 2025, Mike Johnson nearly lost his speakership, despite Trump's endorsement, because Freedom Caucus members decided he wasn't pure enough, even though Johnson votes with Trump 95% of the time. In June 2025, the whole thing went nuclear. Musk opposed Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. He called for supporters to kill the bill. He threatened to primary Republicans who voted for Trump's own legislation. And then, in a spectacular meltdown, Musk called for Trump's impeachment, claimed Trump was implicated in unreleased Jeffrey Epstein files, and threatened to create a third party called the America Party. Steve Bannon responded by calling for Musk to be investigated and deported. He literally said the government should seize SpaceX. This isn't healthy debate. This isn't vigorous policy discussion. This is a circular firing squad where everyone's pulling the trigger at once. And it's exactly what happens when movements turn inward. When they stop expanding coalitions and start purging members. When loyalty becomes the only value, but no one can ever be loyal enough. History has seen this before. The French Revolution's terror, the Bolshevik purges, the Tea Party's 2010 to 2014 self-immolation, and every time the pattern is the same. Movements that devour themselves collapse. MAGA is on that path. Let's decode exactly how it's happening, why it's terminal stage behavior, and what it means for 2026. Let me start with the fight that exposed MAGA's fundamental contradictions. On December 22nd, 2024, Trump appointed Sriram Krishnan, an Indian-born venture capitalist, as his AI advisor. Krishnan supports removing country caps on green cards, making it easier for skilled immigrants to stay in the U.S. Laura Loomer, a far-right activist who traveled with Trump during the 2024 campaign, called the appointment deeply disturbing. Then Vivek Ramaswamy jumped in. He posted on X, "American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence." Celebrates prom queen over math Olympiad champ. Translation: American workers aren't good enough. We need immigrants, because you're mediocre. The MAGA base exploded. Elon Musk responded by declaring, "I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend." He said critics were contemptible fools who must be removed from the Republican Party. And then he weaponized X. Laura Loomer and at least 12 other conservatives who criticized Musk's H-1B position lost their blue checkmarks. Their accounts were demonetized, cutting off their revenue. Loomer said, "Elon Musk is going to be silencing me for supporting original Trump immigration policies." Musk used his ownership of X to financially punish dissent within his own coalition. The battle lines formed fast. Pro-H-1B tech billionaire wing, Musk, Ramaswamy, David Sachs, Joe Lonsdale. They argued the U.S. needs skilled foreign workers, that American tech companies can't compete globally without access to talent. Anti-H-1B nativist wing, Laura Loomer, Steve Bannon, Nikki Haley, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They said America first means Americans first, that bringing in foreign workers undercuts American wages and betrays the base. And then Trump had to choose. On December 28th, he sided with Musk. I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. It's a great program. The base was furious. Trump, the guy who built his campaign on immigration restriction, who promised to protect American workers, just publicly endorsed the program that corporations use to import cheaper labor. Steve Bannon accused Musk of trying to establish techno-feudalism on a global scale, and the rift became permanent. Let's talk about what this fight exposed. MAGA has always claimed to be a working-class America First movement. Protection for American workers. Jobs for forgotten communities. Economic nationalism. But it's led by billionaires. Trump, who staffs his properties with H-1B workers. Musk, whose Tesla doubled its H-1B hires from 328 in 2023 to 742 in 2024. The economic populism was always performance. The movement claims to champion American workers while being funded and led by people who profit from exploiting cheaper foreign labor. And when billionaire interests conflicted with the base's nativism, the billionaires won. Trump sided with Musk. He endorsed H-1B visas. He told the base that their concerns about immigration, the very issue he rode to power, were wrong. That's the contradiction at MAGA's core. And once exposed, it can't be hidden again. The base now knows, when it comes down to it, Trump will pick his billionaire backers over his voters, Musk's business needs over their jobs, corporate profits over American first rhetoric. And you can't run a populist movement when the populists realize the leaders are oligarchs. Now let's talk about what happened in early January 2025. Republicans held a 220 to 215 House majority. Mike Johnson could only afford to lose one vote and still become Speaker. Thomas Massie, a Kentucky Republican and Freedom Caucus member, publicly vowed weeks before the vote that he would oppose Johnson. He said Johnson partnered with Democrats to send money to Ukraine, authorize spying on Americans, and blow the budget. Even Trump's endorsement didn't change Massie's mind. On January 3rd, the vote happened. Initially, Massie voted for Tom Emmer. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan. Keith Self voted for Byron Donalds. 6 other Republicans, including Andy Biggs, Michael Cloud, Andrew Clyde, Paul Gosar, Andy Harris, and Chip Roy, didn't vote at all on the first call. Johnson fell 2 votes short of the 218 he needed. Trump intervened. He called Ralph Norman mid-golf game. He pressured the holdouts in closed-door meetings. Norman and Self eventually switched their votes. Johnson won 218-215, but Massie still voted against him. Even after Trump personally lobbied him, even after the pressure, even after everything. And here's what that reveals. Trump's control over the Republican caucus is not absolute. The Freedom Caucus doesn't automatically follow Trump's lead. They have their own priorities, their own definitions of ideological purity, their own incentives. And Johnson, who votes with Trump 95+% of the time, had to beg for votes, had to make concessions, had to spend hours convincing his own party to elect him. That's not a unified movement. That's a coalition held together with duct tape and threats. And then came June 2025. Trump pushed his one big beautiful bill, tax cuts and budget legislation. The Congressional Budget Office projected it would add $2.5 trillion to the deficit and cause 11 million people to lose health care. Elon Musk opposed it. As the head of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, he said it was fiscally reckless, that it would bankrupt America. And Musk went public. He posted on X, "Call your senator, call your congressman. Bankrupting America is not okay. Kill the bill." He posted a Kill Bill movie poster for emphasis. And then, this is the important part, he threatened to primary Republicans who voted for Trump's bill. The bill Trump wanted. The bill Trump was pushing. Musk was threatening to fund primary challengers against Republicans for supporting the president's own legislation. Republican members of Congress were caught between Trump and Musk, trying to keep both happy, knowing that either way, they'd make a powerful enemy. And then it got worse. On June 6th, Trump said he would have won Pennsylvania without Musk's help. Musk responded, "Without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House." Then Musk called for Trump's impeachment. He claimed Trump was implicated in unreleased Jeffrey Epstein files. He threatened to create a new political party, the America Party. He announced SpaceX would decommission Dragon spacecraft, cutting ties with NASA. Trump counterattacked. He threatened to cancel all government contracts with Musk's companies. He said Musk went crazy. And Steve Bannon jumped in. He called for Musk to be investigated and deported. He said Musk is an illegal alien. He urged the government to seize SpaceX. This is the billionaire who spent $300 million electing Trump, who got a government position, who Trump publicly thanked and gave the golden key to the White House. And within 6 months of Trump's inauguration, Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, was calling for his deportation. That's not a policy disagreement. That's a movement devouring itself. Here's the structural problem. MAGA demands absolute loyalty. That's the price of membership. You have to prove you're all in, that you'll never betray the movement. But loyalty to what? To whom? Trump's version of MAGA? Whatever he says today, even if it contradicts what he said yesterday? Steve Bannon's version, economic nationalism, anti-globalism, protectionism. Elon Musk's version, libertarian tech capitalism, free markets, minimal regulation. The Freedom Caucus's version, fiscal conservatism, balanced budgets, limited government. These are incompatible visions, and every member of the coalition is forced to choose. If you're loyal to Trump, you have to support H-1B visas, betraying the nativist base. If you're loyal to fiscal conservatism, you have to oppose Trump's deficit-exploding tax cuts, betraying Trump. If you're loyal to America First immigration policy, you have to attack Musk, betraying the billionaire wing. There's no way to be loyal to everyone, which means everyone is guaranteed to betray someone. And in a movement where loyalty is the only value, betrayal is the ultimate sin. So Mike Johnson, who votes with Trump 95% of the time, gets called a traitor. Elon Musk, who spent $300 million electing Trump, becomes an enemy. Marjorie Taylor Greene gets attacked by both sides, depending on the day. Even Trump himself, the movement's founder, gets accused of betrayal when he sides with Musk on H-1B. The loyalty tests have become impossible to pass. And when no one can be loyal enough, the movement starts eating itself. We've seen this before, many times. The French Revolution's terror, 1793 to 1794, started by executing the monarchy and aristocrats, then turned to purging the insufficiently revolutionary Girondins, then the Hebristists. Finally, Robespierre, the architect of the terror, was guillotined by his own faction. Loyalty tests became impossible. Everyone eventually became a traitor. Stalin's Great Terror, 1930s, targeted enemies of the revolution, then devoured the old Bolsheviks who actually made the revolution. Show trials, forced confessions, executions. 70% of the Central Committee was purged. The movement consumed its own founders. The Tea Party, 2010 to 2014, primaried rhinos like Richard Lugar in Indiana and Bob Bennett in Utah, produced unelectable extremists like Christine O'Donnell, Sharon Angle, and Todd Aiken, who lost winnable seats. Speaker Boehner constantly battled the Freedom Caucus. By 2016, the movement had either collapsed or been absorbed by Trump. The pattern is always the same. Movements radicalize over time. Yesterday's revolutionary becomes today's moderate. Purity spirals accelerate. 90% loyalty becomes insufficient, then 95%, then 99%. Paranoia becomes self-fulfilling, and eventually the movement either collapses or moderates. MAGA is following that script exactly. Let's talk about electoral reality. Trump's 2024 coalition was traditional Republicans' MAGA base, white working class, Silicon Valley billionaires, Musk, Thiel, Andreessen, crypto bros, some minority voters, Latino men, young black men, and he barely won, a 1.5-point popular vote margin. Close electoral college wins in swing states. Now, in 2025, that coalition is fracturing. Independents are fleeing. Musk has a 29% favorability rating among independents. Trump's approval is at 42% overall, 40% on the economy. The H-1B fight alienates Indian Americans, the largest Asian American group and a growing voting bloc. Musk's threats and authoritarianism alienate educated professionals and tech workers. Latino approval of Trump, 54 to 70% disapprove, depending on the poll. You can't win elections by shrinking your coalition. You need 50+% to win. And every faction you purge, every group you alienate, every voter you drive away, that's subtracted from your total. The demographics are already against Republicans. The electorate is younger, more diverse, more educated. You can't compensate for that by being more extreme with a shrinking base. But that's exactly what MAGA is doing. Purging members, attacking allies, driving away anyone who doesn't pass impossible loyalty tests. That's not a strategy for electoral victory. That's a death spiral. Let's talk about what the Musk saga reveals. Elon Musk thought he could buy MAGA. He spent $300 million electing Trump. He got a government position running Doge. He owns X, which gives him control over the information ecosystem the base lives in. He thought that would give him power, control, influence, but it didn't. The MAGA base turned on him over H-1B. They don't care that he's rich. They don't care that he funded Trump. They care about immigration restriction. And when Musk sided with corporate interests over nativism, they rejected him. Stripping blue checkmarks backfired. It proved he's an authoritarian who'll silence critics. That X isn't a free speech platform. It's Musk's personal propaganda tool. And when Trump threatened his government contracts, Musk backed down. Because Trump has the real power. Musk has money. But in a movement built on personal loyalty to Trump, money doesn't buy control. Remember Wisconsin? Musk spent $25 million trying to buy a state Supreme Court seat. He personally campaigned. He called it the destiny of humanity. And he lost. Because movements built on personality cults can't be purchased. They follow the cult leader, not the checkbook. And that's Musk's fundamental mistake. He thought oligarchy and populism were compatible, that he could fund a working class movement and control it. But you can't run a populist movement when the leaders are oligarchs. The contradiction is too obvious, the hypocrisy too blatant, and now the base resents him. Bannon wants him deported. Loomer calls him a censor. Trump threatened his contracts. Musk spent $300 million and got nothing but enemies. Let's talk about language for a second. Rhino used to mean something. Republican in name only. It was applied to moderates who voted with Democrats. People like John McCain or Mitt Romney. Establishment figures in swing districts who compromised with the opposition. Now it's applied to everyone. Mike Johnson votes with Trump 95+% of the time. He's called a rhino. Thomas Massie, a Freedom Caucus member who opposed Johnson, gets called a rhino by Johnson's supporters. Marjorie Taylor Greene gets called a rhino by both sides, depending on the day and the issue. Even Elon Musk, after spending $300 million, gets attacked as insufficiently loyal. When everyone's a rhino, no one is. The term loses all meaning. It becomes just a weapon to attack anyone you disagree with on anything. And that creates a circular firing squad. Everyone gets shot. Everyone's the enemy. There's no safe position, no way to prove purity, no loyalty oath that satisfies everyone. That's terminal for a political movement because politics requires coalition building. It requires bringing people together around shared goals. It requires tolerating some disagreement in service of winning elections. But MAGA has become a purity cult, and purity cults don't win elections. They just get smaller and more extreme until they collapse. Let me be very clear about the opportunity here. When your opposition is fighting itself, you're winning. When they're spending energy on internal purges, primary threats, and loyalty tests, they're not campaigning against you. They're not persuading swing voters. They're not expanding their coalition. And the fights are public. Musk calling for Trump's impeachment, Bannon demanding Musk's deportation, Johnson nearly losing the speakership despite Trump's endorsement. Every one of those headlines reinforces the same narrative. Republicans are chaotic, ungovernable, unstable. They're a cult, not a coalition. They care more about loyalty to Trump than governing effectively. That's a winning message for Democrats. Not as an attack, just as observable reality. And the primaries, oh, the primaries. History is clear on this. When parties primary their incumbents from the extremes, they produce unelectable candidates. 2010 Tea Party, Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, Sharon Angle in Nevada, Todd Akin in Missouri. All lost races Republicans should have won. 2022 Trump primaries, Blake Masters in Arizona, Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, Don Bolduc in New Hampshire. All lost. Primaries produce ideologically pure candidates who can't win general elections. They drain resources. They damage candidates. They force incumbents to move right to survive primaries, making them toxic to swing voters in generals. And Musk is threatening to fund those primaries against Republicans for supporting Trump's bills. That's not a strategy. That's a suicide pact. And then there's Musk's threat to create a third party. He called it the America Party, threatened to split from Republicans if they didn't do what he wanted. GOP senators are terrified of this. Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin said he'd be splitting our party. And they're right. A third party run, or even the threat of one, could be catastrophic for Republicans in 2026. 62% of Republicans view Musk favorably. That's not a majority, but it's significant. If even a fraction of them defect to a Musk-backed third party in close races, Republicans lose. Musk has 29% favorability among independents and 3% among Democrats. So he can't win, but he can play spoiler. He can siphon enough votes from Republicans to hand seats to Democrats. That's the nightmare scenario for the GOP. Not losing to Democrats because they got outworked or outspent. Losing because their own coalition split, because billionaire egos and purity tests fractured the party beyond repair. And Musk has the money to do it. He could fund candidates in every competitive race, force Republicans to fight three-way battles, drain resources and attention. He probably won't. The threat alone gives him leverage. But the fact that GOP senators are publicly worried about it tells you how fragile the coalition is. Here's the bottom line. Movements that turn inward collapse. That's not speculation. That's history. When you stop expanding and start purging, when loyalty tests become impossible to pass, when every ally eventually becomes a traitor, you're in terminal decline. MAGA is there. The H-1B fight exposed the class contradiction between billionaire leaders and working class base. The Johnson speakership fight showed Trump can't control his own caucus. The Musk-Trump breakup revealed that personalities can't hold the coalition together when interests diverge, and the math doesn't work. You can't subtract your way to electoral victory. Every faction you expel, every voter you alienate, every primary that produces an unelectable extremist, that's one more loss in 2026. Democrats have an opportunity, not to sit back and wait for Republicans to collapse. That's not guaranteed, but to capitalize on the chaos, to run on competence, stability, and governance, to contrast coalition building with cult behavior, to make the case that democracy requires tolerating disagreement, building coalitions, and winning voters, not purging heretics. Because that's what this is really about. MAGA has stopped being a political movement and become a purity cult. And purity cults don't win elections. They just keep shrinking until there's nothing left but true believers screaming at each other. And for everyone who values democracy, the rule of law, and functional government, that's exactly what we need to be pointing out. Not with glee, not with mockery, but with clarity, with evidence, with the sober recognition that authoritarian movements devour themselves. And MAGA is right on schedule. Thanks for spending a few minutes digging into this with me. If you want more grounded, progressive commentary without the outrage bait, subscribe and stick around. Every time you watch, share, and engage, it helps build a community that believes democracy is worth understanding and defending. I'll see you in the next video.